The air was thick with radiation dust and the bitter scent of ozone. Dallin Cross trudged through the wasteland with his pulse rifle slung across his chest, his visor flickering from interference. The bombardment had ended hours ago, but the sky still burned a dull crimson, like a wound that refused to close. He was supposed to feel victorious, another enemy nest erased, another sector cleared, but all he felt was the hum of his exosuit cooling fans and the silence that came after too much death. Every step he took sank into blackened soil that once teemed with alien life. His boots left faint blue imprints that quickly vanished beneath drifting ash. The comms were dead. The command feed had gone silent after the last transmission, "Sweep the area." No survivors. Dallin's scanner pinged intermittently, showing only heat ghosts and static, until, there. A faint pulse, deep underground, irregular but alive. He adjusted his helmet filters and crouched near a fissure split open by orbital fire. Faint warmth breathed from below. It could be a wounded combatant. Or bait. He aimed his wrist light downward and saw something glint, smooth, curved, metallic yet organic. He descended cautiously, boots scraping the stone. The deeper he went, the less the ash smell lingered. Instead, he caught the iron tang of blood. His rifle light swept over the cavern floor, and froze. A massive shape lay slumped against the rock wall. A dragon, or what was left of one. Scales dulled to gray, wings torn, her chest rising shallowly. Beneath her, two smaller forms trembled, half hidden beneath her ruined wing. Dallin's throat tightened. He'd seen dragons from orbit, burning cities like living storms. But up close, she looked, fragile. His visor flashed warnings, non-human biosigns, high radiation levels, but he didn't move. The dragon's head lifted weakly, her molten eyes locking onto him. Then a sound, not through his ears, but inside his skull, a fragile whisper layered with fear. "Please, don't hurt us. Mommy is dying." Dallin staggered back, the rifle slipping slightly in his grasp. The voice had come from the hatchlings, their tiny bodies pressed together, eyes wide with desperate light. His training screamed eliminate target. His humanity whispered wait. He stood frozen as the dying mother exhaled a low rumble that reverberated through the stone. The hatchlings whimpered, and a pulse of faint energy shimmered through the cavern, scattering ash like glowing dust. He realized he was holding his breath. The scanner in his gauntlet still blinked red. Command would call him a coward for hesitating. But as he looked at the dragon's flickering life, he saw something the war had stolen from him long ago, a plea for mercy. And mercy, in a place like this, felt like rebellion. Dallin switched his rifle to stand by and knelt, the servos in his armor whining softly. The dragon mother's breathing had slowed to a faint vibration beneath the stone. Her wounds were catastrophic, plasma burns deep through the muscle, carbon scoring along her flank. He reached instinctively for his medgel injector, then stopped. It was designed for humans, not scaled titans. Still, something in him refused to walk away. He removed his helmet, the air stung his lungs with heat and metal. The hatchlings crept closer, cautious but curious. Their scales shimmered faintly with bioluminescent veins, flickering like neural circuits beneath translucent skin. One nudged his gauntlet, a tremor of energy pulsing into his palm. He flinched. Images flooded his mind, fragmented visions, memories not his own. He saw towering spires made of crystal and light, dragons soaring through violet skies, human ships burning them down with orbital lances. He gasped, pulling his hand away, heart pounding. The hatchling chirped softly, frightened by his reaction. He looked back at the mother. Her eyes flickered open again, molten gold dimming like dying embers. A weak telepathic pulse reached him, trembling and ancient. "You are human. The destroyers. But your heart is loud. You feel sorrow." Her chest shuddered. Dallin's throat tightened. "I didn't know," he whispered aloud, voice breaking in the heavy air. They told us you started this. Her voice echoed again, faint as static across an old transmission. They lied. They feared what they could not control. We offered peace once, before the fire fell. She exhaled, and a faint burst of plasma mist escaped her mouth, fading like dying stars. One hatchling pressed its tiny head to her snout, whimpering. Dallin's pulse spiked as his visor alarm chirped, biometric reading flatlining. The dragon's heartbeat stopped. For a moment, the cavern was utterly silent except for the faint hum of his armor's power core. Then, the hatchlings turned toward him together. Their thoughts reached him in unison, a whisper overlapping with grief and trust. She said, "Protect us." Dallin's eyes stung. He shut down his visor completely, darkening the world to nothing but soft light from their bodies. He spent the next hour building a makeshift grave using his exosuit's mechanical strength. When he covered the dragon's face, her scales caught the last flicker of bio-light from her young. It painted her in hues of violet and silver, like she was ascending into starlight. Dallin stood back, chest heavy. He knew what command would call this: dereliction, treason, insanity. But he no longer cared. He sealed the cave's entrance, activated his personal jammer, and looked down at the hatchlings curled against his boots. "All right," he murmured, voice low. "You're coming with me." Outside, lightning rippled across the blood-red sky, and far above, the orbiting fleet's search drones began to move, drawn to his fading heat signature. The wind howled across the wasteland as Dallin stepped out of the fissure, clutching the small thermal pod strapped to his chest. Inside, the hatchlings huddled together, their faint glow leaking through the cracks of the metal casing. His armor's servos strained under the extra weight, and the radiation storm battered against his visor like burning sand. The path ahead was a twisted expanse of molten rock and fallen structures, what used to be a dragon colony, now a graveyard of scorched bones. His boots sank into the ash with every step, the air shimmering with static discharges. He adjusted the filters on his helmet and activated the scanner. Drones were sweeping the valley, 3 metallic blips in motion, their searchlights slicing through the dust storms like pale knives. He ducked behind a half-collapsed turbine tower and switched to stealth mode. The electromagnetic hum of the pod risked detection, but the hatchlings' life signatures were faint enough to blend with background radiation. For now. He took a breath, steadying his hands. Each decision now carried weight measured not in orders, but in lives. The thought felt alien to a soldier trained for elimination, not preservation. He moved through the ruins, each step echoing the ghostly resonance of the destroyed city beneath him. The hatchlings stirred, their presence brushing against his mind like soft static. They projected flashes of emotion, fear, hunger, confusion, and something else, something fragile that felt like trust. As night fell, Dallin found shelter in the husk of an abandoned survey outpost. He bypassed the rusted locks using his armor's pulse driver, sealing the door behind him. The interior was silent except for the low thrum of old machinery trying to live again. He set the pod down gently and powered it open. The hatchlings blinked against the dim light, their translucent wings twitching. One of them let out a faint chirp, and the sound vibrated through the metal walls like a harmonic tone. The smaller one stepped toward him, eyes reflecting his visor's glow. He reached out slowly, palm open. When its scaled head touched his glove, a cascade of imagery filled his mind, a brief memory of warmth, wind, and the vast freedom of flight. It lasted seconds but left him breathless. The connection between them was strengthening. He rationed his water and crushed rations, dissolving small portions into the hatchling's nutrient pack. They drank, their tiny claws gripping the edges of the pod. For the first time in months, Dallin felt purpose untainted by war. Yet his armor's proximity sensor interrupted the silence, 2 incoming aerial signals, closing fast. He killed the lights and crouched by the window. Through the cracked glass, he saw the drones hovering low, scanning for life signs. He muted his suit systems entirely and waited. After several agonizing minutes, the drones drifted away, fading into the electric storm beyond. Dallin exhaled slowly. He looked down at the hatchlings curled up beside his leg. They had fallen asleep, faint light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Somewhere deep in his chest, something shifted, an emotion he hadn't felt since before the war began. He couldn't name it, but it frightened him more than the enemy ever had. Morning came in a flicker of gray light filtered through the cracked walls of the outpost. Dallin's visor registered a 48% drop in atmospheric stability, radiation levels climbing. He powered down the suit's shielding to conserve energy and checked on the hatchlings. They were awake, one perched on the edge of the pod, wings unfolding for the first time, shimmering with faint electromagnetic currents. The air rippled around them as if gravity itself bent in small pulses. He stared, unable to look away. They were evolving faster than any life form he had ever seen. His neural link pinged with static, fragments of their thoughts bleeding into his consciousness. Hunger, light, cold. Simple impressions, but the emotional weight behind them was enormous. He opened a ration pack, breaking the synthetic protein slabs into smaller pieces. The hatchlings devoured them eagerly, their teeth emitting microscopic sparks as if their biology converted matter into energy directly. When they finished, they looked up at him with strange, intelligent eyes. The larger one tried to form sound. Len, it stuttered softly, the tone carrying both vibration and resonance like a note struck in his mind. He froze. His name. They had learned it. Somewhere between wonder and fear, his pulse quickened. The dragons were more than survivors, they were absorbing information through direct neurological proximity. Each shared thought deepened the link, each heartbeat synchronizing closer with his. He began to dream their dreams, vast skies, starfields alive with color, human warships raining light upon them. And buried beneath those visions, a truth: the dragons were not beasts, but ancient travelers from beyond the known systems, custodians of worlds that predated humanity's rise. That night, when the storms returned, one hatchling unfurled its wings and exhaled a faint pulse of heat that surrounded them in a cocoon of warmth. It wasn't fire, it was radiation control, a biological shielding. Dallin stared in awe. "You're adapting," he whispered. "To us, to this planet." The smaller one chirped, pressing its head against his arm. He accessed his mission logs out of habit. The last entry glowed red, unauthorized silence for 47 hours. Termination protocol pending. His throat tightened. Command was coming. He could already imagine the orders: neutralize anomalies, recover black box, confirm kills. The thought made his stomach turn. Before resting, he recalibrated his weapon and placed it aside. The dragons watched him with patient eyes, understanding more than they should. Outside, thunder rolled like the growl of some god awakening. He wondered if they could sense it too, the inevitable collision between mercy and obedience. As the wind screamed against the metal walls, Dallin closed his eyes, hearing faint voices in his mind. Home, safe, family. The words weren't his, yet they filled the space where fear once lived. He didn't know what he was becoming, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: when command arrived, they would find a soldier who no longer fought for humans alone. The sound of engines broke through the storm. Dallin's helmet sensors flared to life, multiple heat signatures descending from orbit. Dropships. His stomach turned cold. He shut down every active circuit in his armor, plunging the outpost into darkness. The hatchlings sensed it too, their light dimmed, scales shifting color to match the metallic floor. Their ability to adapt had advanced beyond logic, an organic camouflage interwoven with quantum refractors in their skin. They pressed close to him, trembling but silent. Through the cracks in the wall, he saw the descent pods slam into the valley, their thrusters spewing white fire. He recognized the markings: Task Force Seraph, his own division. They were the kind of men who didn't ask questions. If they found the hatchlings, there would be no mercy, no hesitation. He activated his neural uplink and accessed the fleet's comm chatter through residual frequencies. The encrypted signal was faint but enough. Subject, Sergeant Dallin Cross. Status, AWOL. Mission priority, terminate and retrieve specimen remains. He closed the channel before the words could sting deeper. They weren't coming for help. They were coming for him. Dallin packed quickly. The hatchlings were too large now to fit inside the thermal pod. Instead, he wrapped them in a dampened cloak that masked heat signatures. The moment he stepped outside, the air vibrated with the whine of aerial drones. He sprinted across the ridge, his armor's thrusters flickering weakly from low power. Ash spiraled in his wake, lightning crawling across the clouds like living veins. He reached the edge of the valley just as the first searchlight swept past him. The dragons reacted instinctively. One spread its wings and unleashed a pulse of energy that distorted the light, bending it away like a mirage. Dallin turned, stunned. The hatchling's breathing quickened, glowing lines racing across its body like living circuitry. "Easy," he whispered. "Don't give them a trail." They climbed the broken cliffs, moving toward the volcanic spires beyond the dead ridge. Every step burned his legs, every sound from above made his pulse spike. The hatchling's minds brushed against his own, sharing strength, fear, and, unexpectedly, hope. In flashes, he saw their vision of him, a tall figure wrapped in radiant light, guardian of their kind. When the drones finally caught up, their mechanical voices echoed across the ravine, "Surrender, Cross. Do not resist." Plasma bolts scorched the stone beside him. Dallin turned, rifle raised, returning fire. The hatchling screamed. Not with sound, but with psychic resonance that shattered the drone's midair, sending them crashing in arcs of molten debris. The shockwave sent Dallin to his knees. His visor cracked, static flooding his vision. The dragons pressed against him, eyes glowing fiercely. In the haze of smoke, he felt it, an energy building within them, ancient and unstoppable. He looked up at the sky, at the descending ships that blotted out the stars, and realized there was no going back. War had found him again. But this time, he was no longer fighting for orders. He was fighting for something alive, something sacred. The storm above answered with thunder that sounded almost like a roar. The first explosion tore through the ridge, a flash of white that painted the valley in burning glass. Dallin threw himself over the hatchlings, his armor screaming warnings, temperature critical, oxygen low, radiation breach. The air filled with the metallic scent of plasma and ash. Dropships circled above, their engines humming like mechanical beasts. Command's voice echoed faintly through his broken comlink, calling him a traitor, ordering his execution. He tore the earpiece from his helmet and crushed it. There would be no surrender. The hatchlings moved beside him, no longer trembling. Their eyes glowed like twin stars, and Dallin felt their minds pressing against his, their thoughts merging with his heartbeat. They showed him visions. The mother dragon's memories of flight, of peace, of a time when humans and dragons shared the same skies before greed turned them into enemies. Their power surged through him, not as pain but as clarity. He finally understood what they were never meant to destroy, what humanity had lost. When the next bombardment came, the hatchlings rose together, wings spreading wide. Energy rippled through the air, bending light, warping gravity. Dallin felt his body lifting, his suit's system syncing with their pulse. His weapon disintegrated into sparks as plasma currents flowed around his hands. The dragon's psychic energy intertwined with his neural link, rewriting every circuit, fusing steel and flesh, human and dragon. The battlefield became a storm of radiant flame. The soldiers who landed below saw a figure standing amidst the inferno, wings of light unfurling from his back, his eyes reflecting the molten horizon. Their scanners failed, sensors fried by electromagnetic distortion. No human could exist within that energy, and yet there he stood, alive. Dallin raised his hand, not in defiance but in warning. "Leave this place," he said, his voice carried through every comm channel, every mind. You've killed enough. The hatchlings roared, and their cry became a pulse that swept through the valley. The soldiers dropped their weapons, overcome by visions of the destruction they had wrought, cities of dragons burning, hatchlings screaming, skies darkened by human warships. Many wept. Some fled. The ships withdrew, one by one, until only silence remained. When the light finally dimmed, Dallin stood at the cliff's edge, the hatchlings beside him. The storm had passed, and the first stars emerged through the thinning clouds. His armor was cracked, his body weak, but something within him felt infinite. The dragons looked up at him, their minds brushing his with gratitude. Home, they whispered. Safe. He watched them take flight, their wings igniting the sky in arcs of silver fire. For a long moment, he stood alone, watching until they vanished beyond the horizon. Then he turned and began to walk, leaving behind the ruins of war and the mark of something reborn. By morning, search teams found only scorched rock and a single message burned into the earth: mercy is not weakness. It is evolution.